of the world. Oh, my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways. Torah Life.
Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and we are in Calgary, Canada. We just got here and we're just traveling everywhere. So we've been traveling so much I haven't had time to do this week's Torah Parashah, which is coming up on tomorrow, Shabbat. So I'm going to do it right now for this week, and it's the Torah Parashah number 6. We're already 6 lessons into this year's Torah Parashah, and this one is Genesis, Bereshit 25:19 to 28:9. And this week it talks about Isaac, and it talks about his sons Jacob and Esau, and it talks about them and what happens. But let's look at this week's Torah Parashah and just see some of the lessons that they have here. And it says basically, it starts off with the history of Abraham's son Isaac, and it talks about how Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rivkah. Now Rivkah was just a teenager when they got married, and today that seems kind of weird, but during those times that's how it was pretty much. A woman in her teenage years, between 14 and maybe 17 years old, that's when they got married at scriptural biblical times. And the man had so much more knowledge than a woman back then, not because a man just is smarter than a woman, but more because the man just had more experiences than a woman. But the woman had a special intuition. Even from birth, all throughout, the woman has a special intuition that a man doesn't have. And this is why Yahweh likes to bring a man and a woman together so they could take their differences and find ways to glorify Yahweh and build a wonderful, beautiful relationship. However, the enemy knows that men and women have these differences, so what he tries to do is take these differences and tear them apart, the man and the woman. But we have to find ways to use our differences and come together in Yahweh. And certainly Rivkah and Isaac were a great couple, and they used their differences, but their differences also created an issue because they had 2 sons. They had Jacob and Esau, and the problem is Isaac preferred Esau, and Rivkah or Rebecca, the name's Rivkah in Hebrew, preferred Jacob. And so there was a little bit of a division there, and this was a problem. But we go on to see that Rebecca came, just like Abraham wanted his servant to take a wife for Isaac from somebody from his own people. So Rebecca came from his own people, and so that's basically, it sets up of what we have here. Well, it says here, 20 years after they were married, they hadn't had any children. And at that time especially, I mean, throughout all times, it says in Genesis that be fruitful and multiply. That means children are a blessing. To have a baby, to get pregnant, is a blessing. Now today, some people look at it as a blessing as well, but today you have people looking at it as inconvenience. And this is another issue with our thinking today, because it is truly a blessing, and the only true family planner is Yahweh, and he will truly let us know if we're to have children or not, and he wants us to be fruitful and multiply. So unless he has a particular call on somebody's life, he wants us to have a lot of children and be fruitful and multiply, because that's what it says in scripture. But for 20 years they weren't having any children, and Rebecca's heart was just broken over this. So Isaac, being the husband that he was, prayed on behalf of Rebecca, and when he was 60 years old, Yahweh blessed them with children. Rebecca conceived, and she got pregnant. Now, when she was pregnant, after waiting all this time to have a baby, she was so excited, but she was also concerned because it was so uncomfortable for her. There was so much growling and grumbling going on in her stomach, and not like the normal pregnancy. There was just so much more, and the reason was because she was pregnant with twins. She was pregnant with twins, and she went to Yahweh to see what exactly was going on, and was she going to be okay, or was she going to die, because she felt like dying. It was that painful. And Yahweh revealed to her that there were 2 nations in her womb. And what's very interesting is right from the beginning of the time, Yahweh had a plan. You see, whenever Rebecca, it says, walked through a holy house of Yahweh, Jacob would kick or jump up, and whenever she walked at a pagan house of worship, it was Esau that would be the one kicking or wanting to just make attention to that or was drawn close to that. So we see right from the beginning, even before they came out of the womb, they had these characteristics. And Yahweh knew when they conceived, I have a plan, and there's a reason for Jacob, and there's a reason for Esau, because Yahweh could have just said, okay, you're going to get pregnant with Jacob, and that's going to be it, and there's going to be no strife, and it's going to be straight away, that's going to be it. But why was Esau in the picture? Because there was a reason for this. We don't know all the reasons Yahweh has, but he does reveal to us a lot, and he has revealed to us a lot in his Torah, and we're going to see several of the reasons for Esau. But we see this week it focusing a lot on Jacob, especially. But we go on to see here, it says that there's the rights of a firstborn in the children. They're the ones that are supposed to receive a blessing. They're the ones that everything's supposed to fall down from the father to the firstborn male. And you know, Esau, it says here in Genesis, this week's Torah, and it says here in Genesis 25:29 all the way to Genesis 25:34 about Esau giving his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of soup and a piece of bread. You see, he was so concerned about dying and so concerned about his own physical health that he wasn't thinking about his spiritual health. He wanted this instant gratification. And his true colors started to show. You know, the heart reveals the wrong person. And I don't believe Jacob was doing anything wrong here, because he knew the value of the birthright, and he knew that his brother didn't honor that, so he wanted that. And at that part, it wasn't anything wrong, but what Jacob did later on was an issue. It goes on here, and Yahweh tells Isaac in Genesis 26:4, I will give the land you're standing into your descendants. All this because Abraham heeded to what I said and told him to do. He followed my commands, regulations, and teachings. So Yahweh is blessing the children of Abraham because Abraham followed the guidelines and the instructions that Yahweh told him to keep. You see, everyone out there, if you have children, you know, the blessings can be passed down to your children. If you're following the guidelines, instructions, and command, you are storing up blessings not only in heaven, but also in the future generations. So Isaac was promised the descendants will be multiplied because of Abraham, and that's where it stood. But Isaac wasn't 100% convinced, because it says Isaac settled in Gerar. The men of the place asked him about his wife, and out of fear he said, she's my sister. Now this is very interesting, because his father Abraham said the same thing about Sarah. We just read a couple of Torah portions ago, because out of fear of them taking the wife and killing him, out of fear he said, she is my sister. Now this is a problem. First of all, we have Abraham lying. Technically he didn't lie, because it was partly his half sister Sarah, but he pretty much lied because it was his wife. And then we have his son here saying the same lie. And the main reason is, the thing to know is, this curse of lying hasn't been broken. But the main thing is, it's the fear that they both had. See, the only fear we're told to have in the scriptures is the fear of Yahweh. And when they have this fear, that means they don't trust Yahweh. So they're lying, not trusting Yahweh to take care of this. And this fear, you know, goes on. It also goes on not only to our children, but to our spouse as well. Because Yahweh said, when Rebekah was pregnant, Yahweh told her, you will have 2 sons, and the younger will serve the older. But again, Rebekah didn't trust Yahweh's words. So she tried, because she didn't trust Yahweh, she tried to deceive Isaac, and she dressed up Jacob as Esau to get the blessing that Yahweh had already promised to him. Again, she lied out of fear. She lied out of distrust, and so did Isaac here. But Yahweh looked upon all that and still blessed them, and Isaac became a very rich man. And as again, he had a plan. And from the beginning, Isaac is going to have 2 sons, and the younger is going to rule over the older. So it goes on to say, Isaac became a very rich man, and here's where the problem started to happen. It goes on to say that when Esau was 40 years old, interesting, the same age as his dad when his dad got married, when he was 40 years old, so again, here we have the child following the pattern of the parents. And all throughout Scripture it tells us that the children need to learn Torah. The parents must teach the children Torah. The children will follow the pattern of the parents. So we see Esau getting married when he was 40 years old. But here's the problem. Esau married women, 2 women, not just 1 but 2, where he shouldn't have. Because just like Abraham set the example, go to my own people and take a wife for my son Isaac, or for my son Jacob, and for my son Esau. But Esau broke that. Esau said, you know what? I am going to get a wife from where they said not to. And it says here in Genesis 26:34, when Esau was 40, he took wives, both from the Hittites. So he took wives from there, which it wasn't pleasing Isaac and Rebekah. He wasn't honoring his parents. And it even says they became a cause of embitterment to the spirit of Isaac and Rebekah. Now, it goes on in the next verse in Genesis 27:1, in the course of time, Isaac has grown old and his eyes dim. And some people say he became blind. Well, you know, if we look further into this, the Jewish sages say that the reason why Isaac became blind was because the 2 wives that Esau took were creating all these spells and these potions, and they had all this steam coming from these potions and these spells that got in the eyes of Isaac, and that's why he became blind. Very interesting. And they've been studying this for a very long time, so there's a lot to say to that. Well, look what this did, though. It led to the deception of, I want to say the deception of Rebekah, because Rebekah convinced Jacob to steal the blessing from Esau, but to do it, what had to be done was Isaac had to be blind, and Isaac was blind because Esau had married wives that he told him not to, and they were cooking up stuff that made Isaac blind. So you see, what we do has such an impact on our life, maybe not immediately, but eventually we're going to suffer the consequences. Esau didn't honor his parents. He married women from the Hittite tribes, and they created this issue which made Isaac blind. And then later, when Rebekah told Jacob to use deception to go in and say he was Esau, Isaac was fooled, and the main reason why was because he couldn't see. You know, so our consequences have a tremendous thing to do with the results. And that's what we're just getting at here, everybody. It's very interesting. Now we go on to say, it says, to make it even worse, Esau took a 3rd wife after he was deceived, after he didn't get the blessing that he was supposed to get, or that he was meant to get, but he didn't get it. He wasn't supposed to get it because Yahweh originally didn't want him to. But he went and took another wife from the tribe of Ishmael, just like to add insult to injury, or just make that wound even worse. So you know, the reason why Yahweh gave Isaac to bless Esau and say he will live by the sword, because this is what he was bringing upon himself. Well, we go on to see here that Esau had a lot of bitterness towards Jacob for what was done, and he wanted to kill him, and Jacob fled. And again, Yahweh told Rebekah when Rebekah was pregnant that the older will serve the younger, but because Rebekah created this deception, what problem did it create? Well, Jacob had to spend many years away from his family and away from his home because he was too scared to go back, because he didn't trust Yahweh, because Rebekah didn't trust Yahweh, and it took that much time away from them. And so then finally, after Isaac died, Jacob went on to go pick a wife for himself, which is from the same home, from the brother of Isaac's wife. So he went to his uncle to marry the daughters, and that's exactly what happened, which we'll see next week. But he was living in fear. He was living in fear of his brother. He couldn't go back home. All that because of the deception and not trusting Yahweh. So we see that it's not trusting in Yahweh, understanding there are consequences. Yahweh's given us a plan. He's given us the guidelines in his Torah, and he tells us, fear me and everything else will be fine. You don't have to fear man. You don't have to fear money. He will provide our needs. We don't have to worry about everything else. And we have these great examples in the Torah, in the scriptures. And that's this week's Torah Parashah. Please go to TorahLife.tv. That's TorahLife.tv. And I post videos every day, or as much as I can, as often as I can. And then the website, TorahLifeMinistries.org. All right, everybody, this is Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you again soon.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways.